Having invaded Ukraine, Russia is forced to fight an unexpected enemy. Russia is having a very difficult time in this war due to winter conditions, as it has done many times in history. It is becoming more and more difficult for Russia to win this war. So how does winter affect this war? Why is Russia helpless in the face of winter? What was the effect of winter in previous wars? Let's find the answers to these questions together. Winter in Russia, the northernmost country in the world, is always very cold. Some parts of Russia are currently recording temperatures of -40 degrees Celsius. Such harsh winter conditions in Russia have repeatedly affected historical events. Winter in Russia changes the course of life so much that scholars use the term general winter to describe the cold in Russia. There are dozens of articles on the impact of weather conditions on wars in Russia. In his study of winter warfare in Russia, author Alan Chu concludes that general winter was a major contributing factor in the military failures of both Napoleon's and Hitler's invasions of Russia. Now the Russian army is facing a similar situation. The Russian army has not made adequate preparations for winter conditions. Russian soldiers do not even have winter clothes. There was a very important development in this regard today. A Russian regiment has asked for more equipment and medical supplies in a desperate video appeal for its war in Ukraine, as both sides prepare for a tough winter fight. The commander of a group of mobilized soldiers from Russia's Kemerovo Oblast addressed the appeal to the regional governor, Sergei Svilyov, saying the soldiers had arrived almost naked. They have almost no protection, only 2 pieces of body armor. Everything else, the sides are completely exposed. They are almost nothing else. No thermal underwear either, the children are freezing. In this video, it was clearly visible that the Russian soldiers behind the commander were cold. The video of the commander describing the problems of Russian soldiers had a huge impact in Russia in a short time. Millions of Russian citizens shared this video and got angry at Putin's government. Many soldiers' families also criticized the situation by making very harsh statements. After this video shot by the commander, the reactions against Putin continue to increase. Why is Russia so unprepared for this war? Why didn't the Russian army plan enough for the winter? There's a simple answer to this question, because none of the Russian army's plans worked. The Ukrainian army showed a historic resistance and prolonged this war. The war, which Russia planned to end in a few days, has been going on for 10 months. Russia had not prepared for such a long war, because the Kremlin thought it had the most powerful army in the world. Zelensky continues to disrupt all of Putin's plans. The Russian army is suffering heavy losses and is completely helpless in the face of winter conditions. The total number of casualties of the Russian army in the war has exceeded 95,000. The whole order in Putin's army is broken. Faced with these results, Putin realized that the war would not end very soon. He gave up the propaganda on this issue and started to make statements that the war could be protracted. This week, Russian leader Putin said for the first time that this war could be a long process. On the other hand, the Russian army is suffering heavy losses due to the winter season. Russia had placed mines in many areas to stop Ukraine's counterattacks. However, the mines have become ineffective due to the increase in ice layers on the ground. That's why the Ukrainian army is able to operate without getting caught in the mines. In addition, almost all of the Russian army's winter-proof tanks were destroyed. A total of 2,966 Russian tanks have been destroyed since the beginning of the war. Due to the destruction of these tanks, the Russian army cannot make any progress in winter conditions. The tracks of Russian tanks were designed for winter conditions, but other ground vehicles cannot move on icy ground. By destroying Russian tanks, the Ukrainian army has foiled another of Putin's plans. Putin had another plan that he wanted to use in winter conditions. Putin was planning to end the solidarity of the Ukrainian people by attacking Ukraine's energy facilities. Ukraine's leader Zelensky pursued a very determined policy in the face of Russia's invasion attempt. Zelensky made very effective speeches to increase the solidarity of the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people as a whole continue to support their army. Ukrainian citizens say they will never give up until the occupied territories are liberated. This makes it difficult for Russia. Russia wants the Ukrainian people to give up. That's why the Russian army launched missile strikes on Ukrainian power plants. But the Ukrainian government managed to foil this plan too. After these attacks, Zelensky went in front of the camera and addressed the whole world. Zelensky made a very effective speech saying that the Ukrainian people needed generators. Many governmental and non-governmental organizations decided to send generators to Ukraine. Aid for Ukraine was collected at a meeting in Paris. French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna announced that nearly 1 billion euros were collected at the Solidarity with the Ukrainian People conference. Thanks to this aid, Ukraine's electricity needs have been largely met. Ukrainian engineers have also made great efforts to repair all the damaged power plants. Many power plants have been fixed. The problem has been largely solved and the solidarity of the Ukrainian people has increased. Another Putin plan foiled. However, war experts continue to warn about this. There are calls for more generators to avoid energy problems in Ukraine in the future. Many generators are still being sent to Ukraine. The Ukrainian army is trying to take advantage of the winter conditions. To this end, it is stepping up operations in many regions before it gets colder. In recent days, more than 500 soldiers have been dying in the Russian army almost every day. The Ukrainian army continues its operations in Bakhmut and Zaporizhia, where the air temperature is 0 degrees. The Ukrainian army has a very important tool to gain superiority in winter conditions. The camera systems of the drones used by Ukraine have been developed with the latest technology. In this way, it is possible to fly in winter conditions and detect Russian targets. The Ukrainian army plans to inflict more losses on the Russian army by conducting drone operations throughout the winter months. Bayraktar drones from Turkey have a technical capability to fly even when it is snowing. It is thought that these drones could completely change the course of the war. The Russian army may continue to retreat throughout the winter months to avoid further losses. On the other hand, there is another very important danger for the Russian army. Russian soldiers who have no winter clothes have no place to stay. The Russian army is staying in schools in the regions they occupied in Ukraine. However, due to the war, the heating systems in these regions have been badly damaged. There are many reports that hundreds of Russian soldiers have fallen ill due to the cold, and there is an epidemic among the Russian army. Russian soldiers are losing their health as the winter conditions worsen. Having suffered a great defeat, Russian soldiers are unable to fight diseases. Because Russian soldiers are not getting enough nutrition and their immune system is about to collapse. Russian soldiers are finding it very difficult to continue this war. The weapons used by Russian soldiers are also not suitable for the winter months. In this war, the Ukrainian army destroyed many Russian ammunition depots. In response, the Kremlin found an interesting solution. The weapons in military warehouses from the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics were distributed to the Russian army. Made 40 years ago, these weapons were a product of old technology. When these weapons get wet, they constantly jam. Russian soldiers know that the weapons they use are of very poor quality. That's why the soldiers don't want to engage in any conflict. Russia is negotiating with other countries to buy new weapons, but no one wants to sell weapons to Russia. The Russian army, which suffered a major defeat in Ukraine, is having a hard time under the influence of winter conditions. Winter is the end of Russia. This winter could be the last winter Putin rules Russia. What do you think about the impact of winter conditions on the war? How do you think the Russian army will be affected by winter conditions? What do you think about Zelensky's measures? Share your opinions with us. Follow us